Beautiful, beautiful, beloved beings. Yeah, I have a little bit of awareness around my own journey that feels very important to share with those that are moving through it. Although I am aware that the words and the information may only cause further disturbance, disruption, and the reverse of. So it is very challenging because what I am going to share can be completely manipulated, misconstrued, and misunderstood by mind. But currently there is a pod of beings. A pod is what you might call a soul family or a soul group of individuals that are choosing to go through a level of arrival, transcendence, and completion together. And they're doing it so that it's a more quick, evolved, fast-paced arrival. These beings that are choosing this all around the world have had a very quick period over the last 6, 18, and 3-year period of fast evolution. So fast that the mind is at a point that it is exhausted. The mind is so exhausted, and the experience of this evolution is fatiguing the body. And what happens is that when you evolve so quickly and so fast, it can destabilize you, and it can also cause you to go into levels of mental instability or layers of what you might consider psychosis and spiritual mutations. Now, these beings that are choosing to go through this path are at a point at this moment of time and in the coming days that they have received all the pathways. So how I can explain this is I've been a guide. I provide pathways to God. I provide pathways to purification, and I provide pathways and light maps, and take individuals through different experiences to meet the God presence within, to meet their totality in universal and source consciousness. It's what I do every day, all day, and support those. Yet in those final stages, it doesn't matter who you are supported by. They cannot allow you to, you're the only being that can surrender. And so from my own experience and having moved through this and not having support, had no education, had no interpretation, there was many times that the mind chose to win. The mind chose to fight. And when the mind and the separation point that creates it, the separation, whether you call it ego, whether you call it the separate self, whether you call it the separate mind, there's many things you could label it. And you could label and find shadow selves and demonic selves and descendant selves and infinite selves that will keep you from this surrender into what you would call dissolution of the illusion, not of the ego, dissolution of the illusion of separateness, dissolution and this dissolving into the totality of what one is, illuminated in the presence. Now, these final stages usually for most beings is about 5 final processes. For those that are moving through this fast evolution, and what happens is there's an awareness that something's coming. There's an awareness, but there's so much fatigue, there's so much overwhelm, there's so much at hand, and the mind becomes very erratic. The mind becomes very destabilizing. There are things that it will pull from every nook and cranny to fight to the death. It will tell you that you don't want to do this, you don't want to be this. It will tell you that you're crazy. It will tell you that you don't know how. It will tell you that it's not possible. It will just tell you story after story after story, and it gets very loud in the final stages. In the final stages, it's so loud. The worst mind chatter you've ever heard in this panic right? So panic starts to come up into the body, an internal freaking out and an inability to find peace. There is so much happening and the mind is seeking a way out. Maybe I need to do this. Maybe I need to heal this. Maybe I need to go over here, distract here, give this up, da-da-da-da. And it will do that over and over and over. And what happens over these different stages is the fatiguing of the mind. So the mind gets so tired. The mind gets so tired that it wants to kill itself. The mind gets so tired that it wants someone else to kill the experience, right? So death becomes the focus. I want it all to end. And this mind is so tired, but it's so loud. And so what's happening is the final remnants, the grasp of what the mind has that's keeping one from themselves, comes up in a way where this exhaustion allows for enough space for God to be heard. And so the fatiguing of the body, the fatiguing of the mind, the fatiguing of the spirit, the level of what you could call death through dissension, through the point of if you've got no fight left, then what are you got to do? You're either going to choose to surrender into your totality because you can't fight forever. If there's nothing left in your body, there's nothing left in your mind, there's nothing left, then all that becomes available is the surrender into the release, the final release, the death into the totality of what is. But you can't kill the darkness. You can't fight the darkness. You can't banish the demons. You can't release or get rid of, because in totality, in full illumination, you are all those things. So you are the demon. You are the descended self. You are the earth, the ether. You are all those things, but it is only when you truly see that you are all those things that you can embrace yourself into it. And so this final stages, it doesn't matter what I say or how many ways I can share it or guide it or prepare, the individual being has to just give up. That's really what it is. It's coming to a point of, I don't know, because I'm not God. I give up because I don't have the pathways. I cannot do this. So please, without the desperation, show me enough faith over fear. And this is very challenging. And this is why so many people don't arrive. This is why they'll loop. This is why psychosis will happen, then dissension and the repetitive expressions. And that it is, once it's chosen, the only way to stop it is to choose not to go through with it. Or to give up. To give up the identity, to give up the lie, to give up the story, to just give up. And when you give up, you choose death. You lay down and you die softly. And you surrender. But while the mind is loud, while the body is contracted, while all of that is taking place, that cannot occur. You can't hear God. And so it's going to be an interesting pathway for these beings, this soul pod that are doing this together, because it doesn't matter where they look, seek, or want assistance. Even this message is not going to be helpful, because it ultimately comes down to the final release within. And that's the challenge with transcendence, is you realize your mind is the biggest prevention. You realize that the thinking creates the very thing that you don't want it to do. You realize the body is forcing something out instead of yielding into it. And so it becomes this paradoxical, traumatic experience, because you are in all poles at once. You're in the light, the dark, the up, the down, the in, the out. And if you're in that state and the reverberation is so fast, you have no idea what is true and real anymore. You have no idea, because you can't actually see clearly until that stops. Until that pendulum stops and stands still. And the only way is through by yielding, surrendering, remembering, and letting God guide. That's it. No more mind, no more emotion, no more spirit, no more body, no more higher self, no more universe, no more guides, no more healers. The only thing that will take you there is God. Now for me, I experienced this in a very traumatic way, well beyond my readiness, but in truth it wasn't. It was just I was still in too much control. I was told days before the opportunity. Now this is where perfect conditions, perfect times, and things like this, pods choosing, create a more easeful path, a more opportunity to be exactly there. And I received for 3 days that I was going to have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I could feel it. I knew it was coming. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Mind you, I was still in 3-dimensional trauma. I had not cleared my sacral chakra. I had not looked at my root chakra. My heart was still in pain, abandonment, wrongness, all of the unworthiness, my mother, my father wounds. I was a mess. Yet I was offered an opportunity. I was still very spiritual, or I thought I was. And my mentor had been telling me for the week before if God came and reached out his hand, he, she, whatever, and said, come with me, follow me. And all you had to do was follow. What would you do? Would you say, sorry, I got to go pick the kids up first, but I'll meet you later, God? Now, the truth is that that happens. That might be the extreme expression of showing you. But that's exactly what happens. The mind says, but. The mind says, I'm not ready. I've got to do this. I've got to do this. I can't do this. Instead of just following God. Instead of gently taking God's hand. Now, what happened for me was a medicine ceremony that provided this opportunity. I was taken to the gates of heaven. I knew that I was there. I knew that all I had to do was surrender into God's grace. All I had to do. But instead, I spent 6 hours fighting my mind. It was the most trauma I've ever experienced in my life. And I've had a lot. 6 hours of surrender. I just need to surrender to God, to the ego, to the shadow, to the control, to everything that was in me, in all layers of me, pulling me back out because I was terrified. And then I would surrender. And then I'd be pulled back. And I was vomiting and I was weeing my pants. I was in this loop of suffering over and over and over until it got too much. I knew I couldn't surrender because every time I tried to surrender, the control came straight back. And I cried out and said, I'm not ready. And everything stopped. I was pulled out of that dimensional expression. I was taken away from the heavens. I was landed in my body. I was right here. I was sober as anything. All of the medicine had worn off in that instant. I'm not ready. Now that took me 4 more years to come back to that opportunity. 4 more years of a lot of tears, a lot of transforming, a lot of understanding the multifacetedness of experience, a lot of surrendering, a lot of learning how to die, a lot of learning how to not be afraid, a lot of learning of understanding the shadow has the keys, a lot of learning around the psyche, a lot of interpretation of self, a lot of multidimensional travel, day in, day out, because I spent 3 days after that experience feeling like a failure. I couldn't surrender to God. Now that haunted me because I was unable to accept that I just wasn't ready. And the 4 years that I spent in devotion to being ready, so that the next time that God presented itself, I could surrender, that I could fully embrace myself in God's presence and become one with God. that pathway and the moment, I didn't know it was coming until it did. And there was no fear left. I was able to just be one with God, and it was the most amazing experience, profound. And every single time that I have had that opportunity since, in that level and depth, always, there's no fear anymore. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to clear. There's nothing to heal. So instead, I spend my life guiding others through what I went through, mirroring, telling stories that their mind needs to hear, telling stories to reflect what they are, guiding them through different experiences. But really what I'm doing is I'm manipulating them, because that's what someone who sees the truth can do without it being distorted. Because those that are entrapped in their mind are not free. Those that are stuck in a sick body are not able to get out. It doesn't matter how it comes through. This, you could say, is a level of storytelling. I'm weaving specific threads to guide and remind, and really I'm manipulating light. The same way my mentor manipulated me. The same way anyone that knows does to the mind that does not know. Because to get out of the trap, you almost have to trick the trap. And it's very, very challenging. But when I did arrive, and when I finally did dissolve into God's presence, in totality, I told myself a story. I was like, see, God, I needed to go the long way around. I needed to find this modality. I needed to help all these people. I needed to meet. I needed to experience this. I needed that. And then I was able to. See, it wasn't that I was a failure. It wasn't that. And the answer I got back from God, and I'll never forget it, was no. You just went the long way around. Everything that took you the 4 years of day in, day out mastery, tears, sweat, and this absolute exhaustion, you could have had in a moment of giving it all up. And so I know that no matter how many times I tell these stories, no matter how many times I dance around and weave light and manipulate the ego and the separation consciousness, really it comes down to when someone chooses to be ready to give up. So I love you, beautiful souls, and for all of you that are receiving this and the message of what it is and what is here, that no one can help you now. No one. And that is a beautiful thing. Because when you have no one, what do you have left?